This evening, as we turn towards someone that we have difficulty with, I'm going to suggest that when we're thinking of such a person, it may be good to sort of depersonalize it by thinking of either a politician whose policies we dislike, or a generic, non-specific supporter of such a politician, or someone else who is at a bit of a distance from us, rather than someone we know well and have strong antipathetic feelings towards. Because the whole point of the evening is just to study how we respond to someone who gets us going in one way or another. And it's so easy to hold quite a knee-jerk reaction to people and classes of people whom we dislike. And this evening, I really want to look at how else we might be in relation to such a person or such people. There are a number of pitfalls that we fall into as we turn just habitually towards think about a person or people who live by different belief structures or that we have difficulty with. Firstly, it's as soon as I say other or them or that sort of person, then we have, of course, made a separation between me and them, us and them. It's so easy to other somebody else, and in subtle ways as well. Somebody who's not quite one of us in this way or that way. We can hold a sense of superiority, that my way of thinking is better. My belief system, my political views are better. And that can lead on to a wish to change the other person. Thirdly, and most importantly, there is fearfulness. And fearfulness lies underneath so very many things, so very many reactions that we have. Fear of, for instance, what would happen if the other person or people won out? Which leads, of course, in ourselves so frequently to the desire to counter the possibility of them winning out by trying to win out over them. It becomes a battle in one way or another, and these are parts playing out their parts. It's also very easy, but I find it can be anyway, to be quite swayed by the general opinion of my group, my group of people, and not to stand back and see what actually my perception and sense is of how someone else is talking and acting, as distinct from sort of the opinion of my group, the sort of the commonly held thoughts and feelings and beliefs. And there may well, probably many other ways in which we create and then relate with, react to people whose opinions and beliefs we find difficult, we see as other and different. And not knowing is such a foundational sense in our practice, and I would like to say in the practice of IFS. I love in my IFS practice as a practitioner sitting in the place of not knowing. So here's a quote from John Connolly in the book The Song of the Grass Roof Hermitage. Here's the quote: "Not knowing is a position of vulnerability and humility. The spirit of this is, can you open up to people and ideas? When you see someone voicing political ideas you abhor, can you even hear what that person says? Or are you already creating an argument in your head that he or she will never hear? Can you see that they are just a person like you, trying to figure things out by making them go a certain way? This is a wonderful practice. I used to get so angry when George W. Bush came on the radio, and then I decided to practice just listening without prejudice to his voice and what he was saying. It didn't slow me down from canvassing for John Kerry. I just did it with a lighter heart. So now an exercise. This evening we'll be doing two exercises. The first one is in a way a preparation for the second one. And both, the first one is done individually, the second one in the group as a whole. So let us just settle into ourselves, noticing what is present in our awareness, in our bodies, our thoughts and feelings. And allow a person to come to mind, either a particular person, and Helen, I said at the beginning, it may be good to think of somebody who's a bit removed from us personally, such as a politician whose policies we abhor. So allow a person to come to mind, either a particular person or a generic person in a class of people, who you feel antipathetic towards, such as someone in a particular political grouping or similar. And when you thought of such a person, I'd like to ask you to do the U-turn, as in letter U turn and YOU turn, turning your attention towards your own responses, allowing yourself to notice all the thoughts and feelings towards this person, towards their behavior, how they talk, what they say, what they do, everything. And I'll leave a little space now for that. What do we feel towards this person? What's our impulse? What do we want to do? What would we like to say to this person? If we could, or how do we rant to the television? Just feel the energies, the feelings, the sensations, and let them move in you, giving them space, not trying to do anything with what arises other than give it space, allow it to be there. And if you notice that feelings focus themselves in a particular part of your body, maybe see if you can allow that feeling to expand into the whole of your body, giving it as much space as it wants. Being with, in other words, being with, noticing, being with whatever it is that arises. And the being with, of course, implies a relationship. There's the one who is with, and there are the thoughts and feelings with whom I am sitting. And now the request is to return and look at the other person again, either with an image in your mind or a felt sense. At the same time as holding everything in you that is present. Just that. Just acknowledging your feelings and turning back towards this person. And see if anything has changed. It may well not have. Or it may have. So a really simple little exercise. There's a bit of time now for reflecting into the large group, if anyone has any reflections and responses, and remember that you're muted. Jill.
John, yeah, thank you for that. I really noticed how it took the heat and the energy and all the I just noticed my whole body relaxed, and yeah, it just took the heat out of it. I think that's what I was really struck with, was it just cooled everything down and made everything else feel a bit more open and possible. So thank you.
Thank you. Ra.
Yeah, I think it just made me kind of, I felt more like I owned what was here. It felt more distinct from the other person. When I kind of brought her to mind at the end, it felt like there was her and it was all this all kinds of things. It was good. I don't let myself quite be with the whole mix of feelings, because there's kind of guilt around actually some of what I experience.
And putting it in IFS terms, a part of you feels guilty at the fact that you have these feelings, these other parts which hold strong feelings.
Yeah. And I try and hide them from this person, and hiding them, like I'm hiding them from myself as well. Like they don't get into the light of day quite.
Yes, and so this exercise assisted those feelings to actually have space and have house room. Is that right?
Yeah. And kind of claim them, you know.
Yes.
Like yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Ra. Luli.
So I was experiencing a huge reaction in relation to the person. Quite monstrous in a way, reaction. And this person was visually, and in my experience, very, very big. And then allowing myself to step back and just give those feelings space was actually great. It was not comfortable, but it was there was a lot of space. And when I returned, what was extraordinary was this person had become very, very small. I mean, it was almost visually they had become incredibly small. All power had gone, and I realized actually that there was a sort of experience of this energy is actually my energy. It's a complete responsibility I hold.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Right, Mary.
I noticed when I went back to look at the person afterwards that I was so aware that everything he wasn't really about him, was the product of everything he'd experienced and where he'd come from. And everything I was also the product of everything I'd experienced and everywhere I'd come from. And in a way, we just were that. We were just a manifestation of something. And because we'd had different experiences, we wanted the world to be in different ways. both of us feeling that strongly.
Mm.
It just kind of freed something, seeing it in that way.
Mm. Yeah, thank you. And it's lovely that that aspect came out of it for you, and that you're relating it to the class, given that the exercise didn't specifically go in that direction. But it's, yeah, thank you for that.
Maria's got her hand up, John.
Yeah, thanks, Jill. Maria.
Yeah, I think people have said a lot of what I was going to say, but I think one of the things I noticed while we were doing the exercise was that thinking about their opinions and noticing that it puts me straight into an opinion and a for and against, a stance, and that immediately, when they say what they say, the prejudiced things that they say, I immediately go somewhere else, and then there's no connection. There's a separation, and kind of thinking, they're wrong, and that's not okay, and that's not right, and what I'm thinking right, and and I think that what the exercise helped me to do was just to step back, take that backward step, and just kind of not hear the words, just kind of see the person underneath the word, the fear, the vulnerability, where all that is coming from, like it might come from in me, and it's similar to what I can't remember who spoke last, and they were saying, that we've all gone through something to get to where we're at.
Yes.
This particular person I know was brought up with prejudice, and that was the way it was, and you didn't have different cultures in this country. They should be in their own countries and not here. And that is a belief so ingrained that it feels true to them. Like it feels just as true to me that they should be here and they're welcome. And and our beliefs have come from somewhere, from different nurturing or different people, and it's kind of holding all of that and seeing them as a person and wondering, just getting that mind of wonder. I found myself wondering where that comes from and what that's about, and just having a curiosity about it rather than an opinion and going into my stance of what's wrong. So it gave space and oxygen for me.
Thank you. And that whole area of prejudice, the other person is prejudiced. I'm not prejudiced, of course. I just have my opinions, which are sensible. And I probably I'm sure we could do another class and explore that. It didn't seem time to do an exercise specifically on that, on sort of the what a number of people have been bringing out, the equality, sort of the equality between me and the other person. Just flawed human beings with our own views of how the world is, and our tendencies to think I'm right and they're wrong, and they're prejudiced and I'm just sensible. And goodness knows what depth. I mean, prejudice goes to prejudging, pre-deciding in ourselves. Probably goes as deep as maybe. So, if there aren't any more comments, we'll move on to the next exercise, which is I think it's a great exercise, and it's done in the large group. And I'm going to divide the group into 2 camps, and I'll give each camp one side of a topic to argue for. There are going to be three phases to this exercise. The first phase is arguing your side of the argument, and sorry guys, but I'm not going to let you choose which side you're on. you take what you're given. It would be, I've specifically chosen a topic that I hope will can generate maybe a bit of warmth, if not heat, but not one which is too desperately painful. And so, yes, folks, it's Brexit time again. So I'm going to ask you, so what I want to do is arrange the video tiles in order of the different camps, and I'd like to see if we can arrange everybody's video tiles to be in the same order. So I'm going to ask you to, if you hold your mouse over a video tile, it should change from a pointer to a hand, and you can drag video tiles to specific places. So I'm going to go in the order of my screen. Could you drag my video tile to top left? So I think the main thing is to have the order. So the top 2, the first 8 people are me, Julia, Annie, Maria, Josh, Luli, Catherine and Darcy. And then the other set, Jill, Joe, Ra, Mary, Claire, Helen, Jill and Sue. That's great. So the top 2 rows are going to be in favour of Brexit. So muster your arguments, guys. And the bottom 2 rows are going to be Remainers. I think it's better not to have gone for Brexit. So the way that I want to set it up is this: if you want to speak, just raise your hand and wave madly if I don't see you, and I'll let you know to speak. I'll say please speak, and remember to unmute yourself. We could all unmute ourselves now, actually, if then that'll save time so we don't need to unmute ourselves before speaking. That's great. That's great. So so this is whatever arguments you want to put forward from your case, either following on from what somebody in the other camp has said, or a new argument. And and then at a certain point I will end this section of the exercise and we'll go on to the next. So who wants to go first? Brexit or Remain? Don't be shy.
I'm in for Brexit. No, I'm in against Brexit.
You're against Brexit, yeah.
So my point would be, by doing Brexit, we've sanctioned ourselves and made life more expensive for ourselves.
Sorry, we've
sanctioned ourselves.
Yeah. Catherine.
don't actually believe this. I feel an absolute need to say this before I say it. Sorry. Okay, so we've reasserted our sovereignty and we've stopped foreigners having a say over the politics of this country, and it's a very good thing.
I just like to thank you. I just like to say to everyone, you are not going to, if you're not going to believe what you're saying, if you're in the opposite camp from your actual feelings, never mind, just go for it. Just have a good rant.
I've just got to say.
Claire.
Well, I don't think the real problem was ever foreigners coming in. I think the real problem is that it's always the ruling class making the decisions, and they're still screwing up the country just as badly as they were before Brexit.
Annie.
I think we need to be proud to be British and to regain our kind of patriotism and our sense of identity as British people.
Thanks. Just before the next person, I know this is, I mean, it seems with Brexit, in a way we can take it really humorously. I'm just going to flag up what the next section of this exercise is going to be, just for you to hold in your minds. And what it will be is each group, when we do change over from first section to second, is each group will speak of fears as to what would happen if the other side wins. So perhaps you could hold that in mind. Okay, Jill.
There are huge economic advantages to remaining, to not doing Brexit. Trade across Europe is just so important to our financial well-being as a nation.
I'm going to chip in, but we're free now to trade without inhibition, without restrictions, with the whole world. We can make whatever trade agreements we like, without being restricted by the bureaucracy and the of the EU. Mary.
It depends what you mean by British. If our identity is of a little island that's closed to everybody, that's one kind of British. But if you mean a country that values difference and embraces people from other places and enriches itself by being open, that's a different kind of Britishness that I stand for.
Julia.
I don't think we've ever been a small nation. Britons were all over the world at one stage. We owned half the world. So the concept of us being a small nation is not really what we are. We're British and we know how to do things right.
Okay, so any last rants? Okay, so let's move on to the second section. And so maintaining your side, as it were, pro-Brexit or Remainer, please speak now of fears as to what will happen if the other side wins. Jill.
I'm really worried that if the other side win, friends of mine who have businesses that trade in Europe freely and easily, it's going to really affect their livelihoods and their families, and that worries me.
Helen.
I'm worried about lots of my colleagues who come from different countries. They'll feel unwelcome and leave, and we'll seem like an island of racists.
Joe.
I'm worried about the loss of scientific collaboration with other European countries, and the lack of the loss of the huge finances put in as a group from Europe, and we've lost all that.
I'm worried that that Britain just carries on being dragged down and by the swamp that is EU bureaucracy, when tens of countries have to try and find some ghastly compromise for working together. So it just a deadening influence on this country. Catherine.
I'm worried that we won't be able to control immigration into this country, and that our fine identity will be swamped, and we won't know who we are anymore.
Josh.
I'm worried that we'll be ruled by the Germans, and we fought 2 world wars to not allow that to happen.
Claire.
I'm really afraid that without such integration and ongoing cooperation across Europe, it makes conflict and war more likely.
Jill.
I'm worried that resources that we rely on, like medicines and things that come from Europe, won't be so easy to get hold of.
Anyone else from the Brexit side? Real fears, as even if you don't really believe them, as to what will happen if we remain in the EU. Josh.
I'm concerned that we will eventually join the euro, and I think that will weaken my personal investments.
Yes, and the euro. I think there was yes. If we were part of the euro, then we would be more subject, I think, says the economics beginner, more subject to the financial state of Europe than if we than keeping the pound. So we're more vulnerable. We would be more vulnerable. Our finances would be more vulnerable. Catherine.
I'm worried that we'd have to keep to EU regulation and keep all these mamby-pamby rules about people's rights and human rights and the Human Rights Act that are holding us back, that are stopping our industry moving forward so that we can become great again.
Josh.
I'm worried about our arms sales, because I think the European Union is rather lax in its security policy, and we make a lot of money by sending weapons to the Middle East.
So, I hope I haven't prevented the Remainers from speaking. I just thought there was a bit of an imbalance appearing for the Remainers finding more arguments. Any other arguments before we move on to the third section?
That's because we're right.
No, you're not. We are.
So Let's move to the third section. I'm aware that I don't know. Well, we'll see whether it's easy enough for both sides to respond to this third section, or whether it's just hugely easier for one side to respond. The third section of this is to please say something that has actually, really, in reality, touched you or resonated with you about what people in the other group have said. Claire.
I was really touched by one of the things that Catherine said about the fear of Britain not knowing who it is anymore. And I felt like that loss of identity speaks to something really big and deep.
Mary.
I was really touched hearing Josh worrying about his finances. It's so sort of peculiar hearing someone you know and love saying something you know they don't believe in, but and don't really have that worry. But because it was him, he was so human. Because I love him, I couldn't stop loving him. So it's like if I did manage to feel that love for anybody, then it wouldn't go away just because I didn't agree with them. And I found that whole experience very touching.
Thank you. Jill.
Yes, just following on, Mary, that it really touched me as well when Josh was worried about his finances. And I think, I can tap into my ancient stuff, but something about the vulnerability that creates, pension and all my savings and things being, or the idea of Josh's pension and his savings being threatened. I think just noticing the vulnerability in the other side, if you like, really caught me.
Luli, and then Julia.
I felt touched by whoever it was who said that it would really stop integration, and the how that felt like a very personal thing, that it would stop people being able to move freely. Particularly, I think it was Jill said her friends couldn't come here easily.
Julia.
I think mine was the same point, the impact that it had on other people in terms of the policies that we were making.
Mm.
And when Josh said that we wouldn't have the same safety policies with the arms and and things, it's like, there's a concern for safety, and are we going to be okay? Is something bad going to happen to us? Like, it's coming from a place of unsafety and unsettledness. But I think I'm on the same side, so I don't know if that matters. So.
Darcy.
So what this last section was so interesting, where people are talking about their fears, because that's what really touches me is, thinking that someone fears something, even if I don't agree that what they think will happen. And we have that going on, in the US and too. But if I can touch into what someone else's fear is, sometimes it's the same fear on the other side. They just have a different assessment of what's going to happen you know, and that gives that common ground. And that's what's really touching me right now.
Thank you so much for bringing that out.
I think I'd kind of like to hear it all again, actually, because what I'm with is the quality more. Like, I wish I'd kind of tracked the quality more than what people were saying. And there was definitely something about vulnerability. And I think, Catherine, because you kept coming with more things, there was some kind of feel for the sort of desperation in the assertion. There was something in the quality of you keep coming with something else of in I can't quite put my finger on it, but I was more connected with the feel of it than actually the content. And I felt for you in that. And I think it was something around you actually finding yourself having strong opinions and an opportunity to express them. I kind of felt for that. You're taking a position, which I imagine there was loads of in the whole Brexit thing. You know, people finding that they were impassioned and that they could put themselves behind something and practicing that expressiveness.
I think it might have been Catherine that said something about, you know, they're going to invade us and take over. And there's something for me about feeling a sense of lack, like that's coming from a sense of lack, of not having, and frightened that everything's going to be taken away by other people. There's going to be nothing left. There's going to be nothing left for me. That kind of coming from that kind of feeling, so having to protect that.
So, anyone else before we draw the Catherine?
I found myself touched by what Mary said about different visions of the future of the country.
So maybe we can draw the exercise to a close and recognize that we are ourselves and not these ranters on either side. And I mean, this is more or less the end of the evening, and I'm very aware that, you know, we could do at least another evening on this, which but the next evening will be a wrapping it up evening. But there's so much in this area, in this field. You know, vast amounts. Of course. Any final comments about the exercise or anything else? Helen.
I've found it again really easy to get into the exercises, and thank you for everyone else. It's always interesting, and it makes, that's the whole point, isn't it? Everyone joining in and saying things. So I'll remember it, and then it has made me feel sorry for people who support Brexit now. So you all acted well, and I think it's probably something that's probably useful to try with children and stuff and things like that. So seeing other points of view and role play, always useful. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Helen.
It kind of reminds me of when you're driving along the road. Not me, of course, but when you're driving along the road and somebody kind of cuts you off, and you're like, "Oh, they've cut me off," but then you see it's a friend, and you're like, "Oh, hi!" It completely changes and shifts your whole being.
Isn't that a disruptive moment? Yeah, it really is. Yeah. Josh.
It's I think the whole thing about Brexit for me was and is such a horrible national experience that it was very weird to play the part of somebody who thought it's a good idea. I feel slightly I need to do something to kind of recover from
De-roll, yeah.
Roll, because it didn't feel nice, actually. So there's something toxic about it.
Oh.
Just having to kind of inhabit that role and say those things, it's yeah, so just naming that, really. Yeah.
Catherine.
Josh, because I felt the same, but I also noticed a part that really likes to argue.
Maybe we all need to have a shake.
Well, I didn't like to have to say the arguments I was making, but yeah, definitely connected with that, and I think that's what Ra.
There was something kind of exciting about it, but kind of also kind of a bit weird. Yeah. Yeah.
Is there anything you would like to do to de-roll from that?
No, it was something about kind of naming it, really. And I have some thoughts about it, but it's more about it's a different strand, really. Yeah. That's,
Julia.
I was just touched by Mary's comments about separating out the person and the opinions, and too often we see the opinions and therefore we decide we don't like the person because we don't like their opinions, and you know how crucial it is to know that those two things are separate, that there is the person and there is
absolutely the and I mean for me I think that's the sort of at the center of this this evening of relating with somebody that whose opinions we dislike. And what I was struck by from what Mary said was with Mary saying because she loves Josh, therefore and then she listens to these opinions, she doesn't stop loving Josh. Whereas if it's the other way around, if it's someone we don't already love, I think I know what I'm saying right here. I'm hoping this is going to make sense by the time I get to the end. If it's someone we don't love already and who comes out with opinions that we really disagree with, then for myself it's going to be a lot more difficult to come to love that person. Something like that. I'm not quite sure if that makes sense.
And then we tend to kind of repel from them, so then there's not a communication.
Exactly.
Kind of share or dissolve, or kind of, that person stays there and we stay there.
And that the recognition of common humanity is sort of underlies or can be such a solvent for that. And in its slightly rather humorous sort of joking way, this exercise, I hope, did something in that direction.
Yeah, it was a really, really interesting exercise for me, the last one, and quite powerful. And I think, and in a slightly different way to what Mary experienced, I think I experienced quite a dissonance of seeing all these people who I really love and respect come out with things that are far from my values, and I know people are, doing the exercise, and I think that rearranging the tiles was really added to that sense of being part of a little gang in opposition to this other group. And it was it's kind of extraordinary how you can set things up in a way to create discord, even in a very loving, relationship rich group. Yeah. And so it was particularly relieving to move to the second part where people were speaking from a place of fear, because that is so humanizing, and that felt back on the sort of the more familiar ground.
Right.
Yeah. There's two things. One's more simple to articulate, which was in the first exercise, because I chose somebody I actually like, and I feel guilty that there are these kind of shadowy parts that are really reactive with her. So because I was thinking very much about parts, because it's IFS based, that felt like there was some relief to know that to kind of have a more direct sense of letting different parts of me occupy the same space in a way. But in this last exercise, there's something. It's interesting because it feels like it became quite binary, as if there's an assumption, that I don't for a minute think Brexit has worked, but it reminded me of what went on when the whole Brexit thing was live, that I live in a corner of the world here, in a community where there was a real assumption what everybody thought. So it was actually impossible to explore like different aspects of this, for me to bring different parts of myself and have debates, actually, because there was a total assumption that everyone was going to vote against Brexit, and you'd really take a risk if you questioned any of the kind of ideas and implications. So that was here for me a bit this evening, that we can do something in our kind of subcultures where we limit the different expressions and yeah. So I just wanted to name that because it reminded me.
Yeah, thank you. another strand to all this. Yeah.
I actually had somebody that I totally respect for having a very more vast take on world things during Brexit, and he was really questioning the kind of my cultural common held opinions, and it really threw me at the time. I don't know what that's like for people to hear. But, if anyone else had anything of that experience of the kind of binary, like we're all assuming which side is the good side to be on. And that there's no deviation.
Mm.
And I didn't want Brexit to happen.
Mm. I haven't thought about that aspect before, so I would want to take it away and chew it over. What you've said, but makes sense. Claire.
Yeah, I think for me that partly speaks all to this dynamic of positions and sides on this kind of thing, pushing you more and more into the black and white and out of the grey area and into these entrenched oppositional positions. And yeah, with a lot of political topics, I often find myself taking a more nuanced position, and that being harder in some ways because it doesn't fit into the boxes that people's paradigm is kind of coming from. And so like with Brexit, for me, because also it's more real to acknowledge that something's lots of different things all at once. And so for me, it was really important when I was having those conversations and I was trying to persuade people to vote to stay, that I was doing that from an authentic place of saying, look, there's plenty about the EU which I think is terrible and I think we're better off in. And it's both together.
I just wanted to say that I was in a group, an online group, and we were all talking about Trump, and we were all kind of, saying all the bad things about Trump and why he shouldn't be in power. And what we didn't realise is that there was a person in the group that supported Trump who felt afraid to speak, afraid to have any opinions, afraid to talk. And it was a real eye-opener to kind of really being sensitive and awake and aware that even if we don't agree, or it's like being aware that somebody might hold a different view, and by voicing our views so strongly, we're stifling somebody else. And is that what even if we disagree, do we really want to stifle people?
Absolutely, yeah. Josh.
I think it's my sense for me, it's easier to play the role I was invited to play. And I'm thinking that because I'm sort of speculating here, but I think fear and anger are fairly basic and simple to express. And I think the Remain argument feel harder to kind of articulate and put into words. So I used to be a drama teacher, so I kind of a little bit of a feel for what it would be to take on a role. And so it's kind of easy,
yeah,
although not pleasant.
Yeah, which makes me, I mean, with fear, there's a lot of energy that gets generated from that fear, which can often come out as anger, and therefore the side which holds more fear can tend to win out because they've got more energy. And that is, to some extent, what it seems to me what happened with Brexit.
What Josh just said reminded me of when he was on about roles and being a drama teacher. It reminds me of when we're children and our parents have opinions, we take them on, and we even pretend to agree because we want to be loved, we want to be safe, and then we forget that they're not our beliefs anymore. We forget they're not our ideas anymore. We adopt them, we take them in, and somewhere along the way we've got lost. And what opinions that I have and beliefs I have are mine, what are inherited, what are from a culture, the system, what are systemic, it's like, how do I even know that? It's like, it's a minefield to begin to kind of sit with all of that. And that's what sitting is, isn't it? The sitting practice, to really sit with it all without manipulating it and just looking at it all, everything that I am and my beliefs and opinions, and just being with it all in a gentle, held way to begin to kind of create oxygen between it all and see.
Thank you, Maria. And I think on that note, I'll draw it to a close because we're coming to 1:45, and we'll sit for a few minutes and then say the practice principles. I won't put it up on the screen. I'll mute everyone right now while I think of it. And we'll say the practice principles 3 times after we've sat for a few minutes. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering. Holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher. Being just this moment, compassion's way. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering. Holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher. Being just this moment, compassion's way. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering. Holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher. Being just this moment, compassion's way. Thank you so much, everyone, for your wonderful participation and comments. And I'll look forward to seeing you in a few weeks' time for our final class. Good night, all.
Thank you so much, John.
Thank you. Thanks, Maria.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Night.
Keep well.